Emma wasn't planning on doing anything unusual that Friday evening. Her week had been filled with endless office deadlines, grocery store runs, and polite smiles at coworkers who never really knew her. She had just settled with a cup of tea and a quiet book when her phone buzzed. It was Laura, her childhood friend, speaking quickly, her voice rushed and almost desperate. She had an emergency meeting at work and needed someone to watch her son. Without giving herself time to think, Emma said yes. She always did. When Emma drove over, she expected the same familiar house she had visited so many times before. She parked in the driveway, smoothed down her hair, and reminded herself this was nothing more than a favor. She had known Ryan since he was born. In her memory, he was still the shy little boy who followed Laura around, holding on to her hand. Babysitting him would be easy. She'd give him dinner, make sure he stayed out of trouble, and wait for Laura to return. But when the front door swung open, Emma froze. It wasn't Laura who greeted her, it was Ryan. He wasn't a little boy anymore. He stood tall, his frame lean but strong, his posture confident. His brown hair fell slightly over his forehead, and his eyes, a shade deeper than she remembered, studied her with a calmness that startled her. For a moment, Emma felt out of place, like she was the one being looked after, not him. "Hey, Emma," he said, his voice lower than she expected, carrying a steadiness that sounded far too grown for his age. "Hi, Ryan," she answered quickly, recovering her smile. "Your mom asked me to hang out with you tonight." Before she could say more, Laura appeared behind him, tugging her coat on and juggling her car keys. She spoke in her usual rush, thanking Emma, promising she wouldn't be gone long, and reminding Ryan to be polite. Within minutes, the front door closed behind her, leaving the two of them in a silence that didn't feel like the one Emma had prepared for. She set her purse on the table and turned to him with a cheerful tone, trying to keep things light. "So, what's the plan? Video games, TV, pizza?" Ryan leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Whatever you want. I don't really care about the usual stuff." Emma laughed softly, unsure why her chest felt tight. "That makes it harder. Babysitters are supposed to keep kids entertained, you know?" "I'm not a kid," Ryan replied simply. His words weren't defensive, just matter of fact. Emma opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. He was right. Standing in front of her was no longer the child she remembered trailing around his mom's parties. He had grown up, and the realization unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. They moved into the living room, where Ryan sat comfortably on the couch while Emma perched at the edge of the armchair. She expected him to pull out his phone, to vanish into the world of scrolling and games, leaving her to her thoughts. Instead, he looked at her, really looked at her as though she was the one who needed watching. "How have you been?" he asked suddenly. Emma blinked, surprised by the question. Most kids his age avoided small talk, but his tone was deliberate, almost adult. "I've been fine. Busy with work. You know, the usual boring grown-up life." He tilted his head, still holding her gaze. "You always say that. Even when I was younger. You'd visit, and when Mom asked about you, you always said you were fine. Don't you ever get tired of being fine?" The question was so unexpected, it felt like someone had reached inside her chest and pressed on a place she usually kept hidden. She forced a smile, trying to brush it off. "Well, life isn't always exciting. That's just how it goes." Ryan didn't smile back. Maybe people just stop asking the right questions. Emma shifted in her chair, pretending to adjust the cushion. She didn't know how to respond. She wasn't used to being spoken to this way, especially not by someone she was supposed to be babysitting. She had expected jokes about homework or complaints about chores, not questions that made her feel like the child in the room, to break the tension. She suggested ordering pizza, and Ryan agreed easily. As she called in the order, she tried to steady herself, reminding herself this was nothing more than a favor for a friend. But the look in Ryan's eyes, the weight of his words, stayed with her. After the call, she returned to the living room, forcing a brighter tone. "Pizza's on the way. I hope you're hungry." Ryan gave a small smile then, one that softened his serious expression. "I am. but I think you're hungrier than me. Not for food, though, for something else." Emma froze for a moment, caught off guard again. His words weren't mocking. They carried a sincerity that unsettled her even more. She didn't know if it was his youth that gave him the courage to say things others never dared, or if it was something else entirely. She looked at him, searching for the right response, but none came. So she settled for a laugh, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You've been reading too many books, Ryan." "Maybe," he said, leaning back on the couch, still watching her. "Or maybe I just notice things people pretend not to see." The doorbell rang then, pulling her from the weight of the moment. She jumped up quickly, almost too eagerly, grateful for the interruption. As she opened the door to grab the pizza, she told herself to breathe, to focus, to remember why she was there. This was just babysitting, nothing more. But as she carried the boxes back to the table, she couldn't shake the strange feeling inside her. Ryan had spoken to her in a way no one ever had before, unafraid and piercingly true. And she wasn't sure if she was ready for what that meant. The pizza boxes sat between them on the dining table, steam rising as Emma opened the lids and placed the slices onto paper plates. She had imagined a quiet dinner, maybe even some awkward small talk. But Ryan leaned forward, elbows on the table, as though he was waiting for her to join him in a conversation that had already begun in his head. Emma took a bite, chewing slowly, hoping he'd distract himself with food. Instead, he watched her with a steady calmness that made her feel like she was under a microscope. She set her slice down, wiped her hands on a napkin, and tried to break the silence. "So, how's school? Any favorite classes this year?" Ryan shrugged. "School's just school. People pretend it matters more than it does." His blunt tone made her pause, but he wasn't finished. "Teachers talk like they've figured out life. Most adults do. But when you look at them closely, you can see if they're just as lost as everyone else." Emma tilted her head, unsure if she should laugh or take him seriously. "That's a pretty heavy thought for a Friday night pizza dinner." Ryan smirked. "You asked? I don't really like fake answers." She blinked at him. Something in his voice carried a quiet conviction, and she couldn't help but feel drawn in despite herself. She leaned back in her chair, deciding to play along. "All right then, what about your friends? Do you at least have fun with them?" "Fun," he repeated, as if testing the word. "Sure, but most of the time, it feels like we're just filling space, talking about sports, games, parties. No one talks about the things that matter. That's why I'd rather be here talking to you." The sentence hit Emma unexpectedly, making her throat tighten. She forced a laugh, trying to wave it off. "You're just saying that because I bought pizza." Ryan shook his head slowly, his eyes locked on hers. "No, I mean it. You're different. You actually listen. You don't just nod and wait for your turn to speak." Emma felt her cheeks grow warm. She picked up her drink, needing something to do with her hands. "I'm just older. Adults are supposed to listen." He leaned forward slightly, his voice steady. "That's the thing, you don't just listen. You actually hear me? Most adults don't even hear themselves anymore." The words sank deep, leaving Emma without a ready reply. She wanted to argue, to remind him he was still young, but something about the seriousness in his tone stopped her. She stared at her slice of pizza, the melted cheese sliding across the plate. Anything to avoid the intensity of his gaze, to change the subject. She reached for the board game sitting on the shelf nearby. Something Laura had mentioned Ryan liked. "How about this? Let us play. First one to win gets the last slice." Ryan chuckled softly, but agreed, helping her set up the game pieces. For a while, the air lightened. They joked over the rules, teased each other about strategy, and even laughed when Emma accidentally knocked half the pieces onto the floor. But even as they played, Emma noticed the way Ryan's eyes kept finding hers, steady and unafraid as the game went on. Their conversation shifted again, this time more gently. Ryan asked about her work, not with the casual politeness of a teenager, but with genuine curiosity. "You like it?" he asked as he moved his piece across the board. Emma hesitated. "It pays the bills. That's what matters, right?" Not really, Ryan said, glancing up at her. You don't sound like someone who's happy doing it. Her smile faltered, and she focused on the board. Well, not everyone gets to do what makes them happy. That's life. He moved his piece again, but his eyes didn't leave her. That's the kind of answer people give when they've already given up. Emma looked at him, startled. Where do you even get these thoughts from? Ryan shrugged. I watch. I notice things. People say I'm too serious, but I can't help it. When you look around, you see how many people just go through the motions. She tried to keep her tone light, but her voice was softer now. And you think that's me? I don't think, Ryan said calmly. No. You smile a lot, but it's not the kind of smile that reaches your eyes. You do things for other people all the time. But when was the last time someone did something just for you? Emma's hand froze on her game piece. She opened her mouth to answer, but no words came. His questions sliced through her defenses. Not cruelly, but with a clarity she couldn't ignore. For years she had brushed off her own loneliness with excuses, telling herself she was fine, telling others the same. And here was Ryan, not even out of high school, cutting through all of it in a single sentence. She cleared her throat, forcing a laugh. You think too much for your age? Maybe, he said, leaning back with a small smile. Or maybe I just say the things everyone else avoids. The game continued, but Emma's thoughts weren't on the pieces anymore. They were on his words, on the strange weight in her chest that hadn't been there when she walked in the door. She felt seen in a way she hadn't felt in years, and it both unsettled and comforted her. By the time Ryan claimed victory and earned the last slice, the atmosphere between them had shifted again. The air felt heavier, quieter. He bit into his slice and spoke casually, almost as if he were commenting on the weather. You deserve someone who actually cares about how you feel, Emma. Someone who sees you. Emma froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. She wanted to dismiss it, to laugh it off like she had done with his other comments. But she couldn't. The truth in his words held her still, pressing against the wall she had built around herself for so long. She set her fork down, her hands trembling slightly. You're different, Ryan. He gave a small, knowing smile. I'd been told that before. Emma looked at him then, really looked, and felt something stir inside her that she wasn't ready to name. She pushed back her chair suddenly, standing up. It's getting late. We should probably clean up. Ryan didn't argue. He simply nodded, still watching her with that same steady gaze. Sure, but don't forget what I said. Emma gathered the plates quickly, retreating into the kitchen. Her mind a storm she couldn't quiet. She told herself it was just talk, just the strange honesty of a teenager still unafraid of the world. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. That night, as she rinsed dishes and avoided his eyes, she realized something she couldn't admit out loud. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. The night had grown quiet. The soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the floor, the only sounds in the house. Emma sat on the edge of the couch, still thinking about Ryan's words, still feeling the strange weight in her chest. He had finished his slice of pizza, yet he didn't move to his room or pull out his phone. Instead, he stayed on the couch, looking at her with the same calm intensity that had unsettled her hours ago. I don't usually talk to people like this, Ryan said suddenly, breaking the silence. Most people just nod and smile and never really listen. You hear things I don't say out loud. Emma tilted her head, unsure how to respond. She felt her heart beating faster, a strange mix of curiosity and caution. You talk a lot for someone your age, she said, trying to keep her voice light, though it wasn't. He laughed softly, almost bitterly. Maybe I just notice things no one else bothers to notice. Emma could feel the tension in the room growing. There was something about him, the way he spoke so plainly, yet with such depth, that made her feel exposed. She had spent years hiding parts of herself, pretending she was fine. And here was this young man seeing her clearly in ways she hadn't expected. What do you notice? She asked, curiosity overcoming caution. Ryan's eyes didn't leave hers. The way you smile, but it doesn't reach your eyes sometimes. The way you help people, even when you don't want to. The way you carry yourself, like you have to be strong all the time." Emma swallowed hard, caught off guard. No one had ever spoken to her like this, not in such a quiet, honest way. Her chest tightened, and she realized that she wanted to look away, to escape the intensity, but she couldn't. She was rooted in place, listening, feeling. "You're perceptive," she murmured finally, almost a whisper. "I just pay attention," he replied simply. "People are easier to understand than they think, if you notice them." Emma nodded slowly, unsure what to say next. She wanted to lighten the mood, to make this feel like a normal evening. "Do you want to watch a movie? Something light?" Ryan shook his head. "I don't need distractions tonight. I like talking. I like understanding people, especially you." Her heart skipped. The words weren't flirtatious, not exactly, but they carried an intimacy that made her pulse race. She tried to force a laugh. "You're being dramatic." "Maybe," he said, leaning back on the couch, eyes never leaving hers. "Or maybe I'm just honest." Emma felt a flutter of something she hadn't felt in years. Attention, recognition, understanding. It was thrilling and terrifying at the same time. She realized how lonely she had been, how much she had longed for someone to actually see her. And here he was, this 17-year-old, speaking to her with a clarity that left her breathless. "What about you?" she asked cautiously. "Do you always talk like this?" Ryan shrugged. "Not really. I usually keep it to myself." "But you make it easy. You listen differently. It's rare." Emma looked down, pretending to arrange the cushions on the couch. She felt her cheeks warm. "I don't know if I'm ready for this kind of conversation," she admitted softly. He smiled faintly. "You are. You just don't realize it yet." The room fell quiet again, but it wasn't uncomfortable this time. It was heavy with unspoken thoughts, with emotions neither wanted to name. Emma felt herself drawn to him, to his honesty, his clarity, and the way he made her feel seen after so many years of being overlooked. "You make me feel like I don't have to pretend," she said, almost without thinking. Ryan's gaze softened. "I've noticed. And you shouldn't have to pretend. People who care about others all the time forget about themselves. That's why I pay attention. That's why I noticed you." Emma's chest tightened further, a mixture of warmth and unease. She had never had someone look at her this way, someone so young yet so understanding. She wanted to ask more questions, to dig deeper into his mind, but she hesitated. Something in the back of her mind warned her that she was treading a line she shouldn't cross. "You're wise beyond your years," she said carefully. Ryan shook his head, his expression serious. "I just notice. That's all." For a moment, they sat in silence, the weight between them unspoken but palpable. Emma realized that this evening had become more than babysitting. It had become a revelation, an awakening to feelings and thoughts she had buried for years. Ryan's words had stirred something inside her, a longing she hadn't admitted even to herself. "Do you ever feel trapped?" he asked suddenly, his voice low and steady. Emma blinked. "Trapped? In what sense?" "In life? In roles people expect you to play. In routines that don't really belong to you. I see it in you. You smile, you help, you care. But do you ever stop and ask what you want?" She looked at him startled. He was speaking with a maturity and depth that caught her off guard. The question echoed in her mind, forcing her to confront feelings she had avoided for years. I don't know," she admitted, her voice soft. "I've spent so long taking care of everyone else. I'm not sure I remember what I want anymore." Ryan's gaze was steady, comforting in a way that made her ache. "Then maybe it's time you remembered. You deserve to be happy too, Emma. Don't forget that." Her hands trembled slightly, and she realized how affected she was by his words. He was only 17, yet he spoke truths she had been running from for years. The intensity of his honesty, the care behind his observation, made her feel exposed and alive at the same time. Emma took a deep breath, forcing herself to shift the mood. "It's late. You should probably get some sleep." He didn't argue. Instead, he gave her a small, knowing smile. I'll think about what I said, and I hope you will too." She nodded, feeling a strange mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. That night, as she walked to the door to tuck him in, she realized she had been changed. Ryan's words had stirred emotions she hadn't felt in a long time, feelings of longing, recognition, and the bittersweet ache of being truly seen as she left his room. Glancing back once to see him already tucked in but staring at the ceiling thoughtfully, Emma knew one thing. Tonight had opened a door she wasn't sure she was ready to walk through. Ryan had spoken to her in a way no one else ever had. And the echo of his voice, his honesty, and his clarity would follow her long after she left the house. The following days after that evening, Emma tried to return to her routine. She went to work, replied to emails, and smiled at coworkers, all while Ryan's words lingered in the back of her mind. His questions, his observations. The way he had looked at her, everything about that night stayed with her, like a quiet echo she couldn't shake. She told herself it was just a one-time conversation, nothing more. Yet her thoughts betrayed her. Every quiet moment, every small pause, brought his voice to mind. She tried to focus on her apartment, on the chores waiting for her. But she found herself glancing at her phone as if expecting a message from him, even though it had been only a day or two. She felt foolish, yet there was a warmth in remembering how fully he had seen her. How deeply he had understood things she had kept hidden from the world. It was a feeling she had long forgotten, a mixture of validation, connection, and longing she hadn't realized she had been missing. Then, one evening, the phone rang. It was Laura, cheerful but hurried as always, asking if Emma could come over again. Emma hesitated. The memory of that night made her chest tighten, a mixture of excitement and unease stirring inside her. But she told herself she could handle it. After all, she was just babysitting. There was nothing to worry about when Emma arrived. She was greeted by the familiar warmth of Laura's home and the smell of dinner cooking. Ryan came into the living room almost immediately, smiling faintly when he saw her. "I made pizza this time," he said casually, his tone light but steady. There was a hint of pride in his words, and it made Emma laugh as the evening went on. Ryan was talkative again, but this time there was an ease between them that hadn't existed before. He asked her about her work, her friends, and even her hobbies with genuine curiosity. Emma found herself opening up more than she had intended, surprised at how comfortable it felt to share things with him. She spoke of her dreams, the small ambitions she had tucked away for years, and he listened, not just with polite nods, but with attention, understanding, and interest. At one point, Emma caught herself staring at him, realizing how much he had changed. He wasn't a child, but a young man with insight, clarity, and a kind of honesty that left her both exhilarated and cautious. She felt a flutter in her chest, an unspoken awareness that the connection between them was unusual, delicate, and yet deeply compelling. "You always make people feel like they matter," Ryan said suddenly, his voice quieter now, almost serious. "But I hope someone makes you feel that way too." Emma felt her stomach tighten. His words were innocent in tone, but carried an emotional weight that touched something deep inside her. She swallowed, forcing a casual laugh. "You're too perceptive for your age. You know that?" "Maybe," he said, with a small smile. "Or maybe I just notice things that matter." She realized then that his honesty wasn't just refreshing, it was stirring something in her she had long suppressed. The longing to be truly seen, to be understood without pretense, had been there all along. Quietly pressing against her heart, Ryan's words had opened a door she hadn't realized she had closed so tightly. As the evening progressed, they moved to the living room, playing a simple card game Laura had left on the table. Laughter came easily between them, but underneath it, there was a quiet intensity. Emma noticed the way Ryan looked at her when she spoke, the way his attention never wavered. She realized that in those moments, she wasn't just being heard, she was being acknowledged in a way that mattered. Time passed quickly, and before she knew it, the night was coming to an end. Laura appeared, thanking Emma again. apologizing for the extra effort and giving Ryan a quick hug before leaving. As the door closed, leaving them alone once more, Ryan turned to her with a soft, almost shy smile. "Thanks for tonight," he said quietly. "I mean it. I like talking to you. It's easy." Emma nodded, feeling the warmth spread through her chest. "I like talking to you too," she admitted softly, and for a brief moment, she caught herself hoping that this feeling could last, that the night could linger a little longer. Ryan's gaze was steady, and he leaned back in the couch, his expression thoughtful. "I don't usually say things like this, but I hope you remember what I said the last time I was here. You deserve to be happy. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Emma's chest tightened at his sincerity. She wanted to respond, to say something clever, something meaningful, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she simply smiled, feeling the truth of what he had said. It was a rare, unguarded moment, and she felt privileged to be on the receiving end. As she stood to leave, Ryan walked with her to the door. He didn't reach for her hand or say anything beyond a quiet, heartfelt good night. But the weight of his words, the honesty, the calm attention in his eyes, stayed with her long after she stepped outside. Driving home, the streets blurred past her, but her mind was sharp, alive with thought. She replayed the evening in her head, every word, every glance, every subtle gesture. She realized how much she had longed for connection, for someone to understand her on a level deeper than casual conversation, and how profoundly Ryan had given her that gift. Later that night, lying in her bed, Emma couldn't sleep. She thought of him, his voice, his insight, the quiet intensity that had marked every word he spoke. It wasn't about romance or anything inappropriate. It was about recognition, about being seen, about finally feeling understood in a way that made her heart ache and swell at the same time. She realized that Ryan's words had changed something inside her. She didn't know what would happen next, and part of her feared what the lingering feelings might mean. But one thing was clear. She couldn't forget him, couldn't forget the way he spoke to her like no one else ever had. The honesty, the care, the depth of his understanding had left a mark, soft but permanent. And she knew it would influence her long after that night. As Emma drifted off to sleep, a small smile touched her lips. The evening had been unexpected, unsettling, and beautiful all at once. Ryan had seen her in a way no one else ever had, and though the future was uncertain, she welcomed the quiet warmth his words had left behind. It was a beginning, a soft opening into a world she had long closed off to herself, and she felt, perhaps for the first time in years, a glimmer of hope that someone, somewhere, truly understood her.